Alright, so you've played a few of the new Minecraft versions and you want to know what's going to be different for the season. We tried to keep things as comparable to 1.8 as we can, so you'll notice that range and melee will do roughly similar damage. Bows do slightly reduced damage compared to the vanilla 1.18 bows, and we've completely disabled sword crits to make both styles as viable as possible in a fight. You'll also notice that arrows will follow the 1.8 trajectories, which means they're not at all affected by player movement. The final thing you need to note about combat is that axes are a fundamental component of melee combat. They no longer do broken amounts of damage like they do in vanilla, which means that the sword is almost always better. Although there are situations where a diamond and netherite axe with sharpness on it can be a very viable weapon. But their primary use in combat is shield busting, where if you hit a player who is blocking with their shield, and you use an axe on that shield, it will break the shield and disable it for a few seconds. Now, this doesn't have to be a charged hit. You can spam click while they're shielding and break the shield. It all works. Shields still block all damage. There's no bow chipping or anything like that, but crossbows that are enchanted with the piercing enchantment go straight through shields like they aren't even there. Crossbows also have a much lower damage reduction than bows, so crossbow is roughly comparable in damage output to a power 1 bow. You can still load crossbows with fireworks, but fireworks can only be crafted with up to 4 firework stars. They still do plenty of AoE damage, but they don't drop people in 3 hits like they do in the vanilla version. In order to make fireworks a bit easier to obtain, we've got creepers dropping a much larger amount of gunpowder than normal, and we've done the same thing with skeletons as well, where they drop an increased number of arrows. Alright, let's talk about tridents. So, both in terms of their damage output and their utility, tridents are a very, very good weapon for you to have. They deal reasonable melee damage, which is roughly comparable to a diamond sword but with a slower attack cooldown, and they do heavily increased damage when they're thrown as well. Tridents are powerful throughout the game. They can output range damage comparable to roughly a power 2 bow. If you kill drowned in the ocean that hold a trident, they're guaranteed to drop an enchanted one. You can find tridents in ocean ruined shipwrecks or in buried treasure, and they can be crafted using copper, prismarine crystals, which are dropped by glow squid or found in the ocean, and a nautilus shell, which is dropped by drowned, or you can fish it up technically as well. On the topic of recipes, we've added custom crafts for the Totem of Undying, which requires gold and emerald blocks, and the Elytra, which requires phantom membrane. Also, turtles drop scoot when you kill them, so if you're a sick bastard, you can obtain a turtle helmet very easily. Enderpearls drop a lot more commonly from Endermen, and they do about half as much damage when you throw them as normal. This equates to 1.25 hearts if you're unenchanted, but the protection and feather falling enchants will lower this damage significantly. Finally, keep an eye on the environment. If you shoot a dripstone spike that hangs from the top of a cave, it will drop from the ceiling and hit whatever's below it. And if you shoot a beehive with an arrow, any bees in or around that hive will anger on whatever player is closest to it. Also with bees, if you use a glass bottle on a full beehive, you'll get a bottle of honey, which you can drink to gain 2 absorption hearts for the next 30 seconds, which makes them a very interesting option for combat. Alright, let's run through caving for a minute. So the first and probably the most important thing is that caves run below Y0. We've adjusted the ore rates a bunch so they're closer to what you would expect in a 1.8 game. Additionally, the levels to mine ores are very slightly different, so for diamonds you want to head to the bottom of the world at the lowest Y level possible, while for gold you want to aim to be around Y0 for the best results. Also related to ore spawning, with our changes, the amount of iron in early caves is much lower, resulting in a lot of people struggling to make armor very early in the game. To kind of combat this, you can now craft chain armor. It requires 11 ingots to make a full set. Along with this, we've got an inbuilt recipe for fast smelting, so if you craft your ores into ore blocks to smelt, you can smelt 9 ores at once, and doing so provides only a small fraction of the XP you would gain by smelting each thing individually. All of the structures in the world have been improved, with chest loot tables being much more enjoyable than vanilla. All chests tend to contain loot that will be useful and are generally less likely to contain completely broken or completely useless items. Dungeons are a lot more common than previous versions, and they can contain shulker shells, which you can use to craft a shulker box. Alternatively, you can also craft a shulker box out of copper and gold. Mineshafts feature tons of cobwebs, but they will always drop as string even if you shear them. However, you can use 9 string to create 1 cobweb. Finally, amethyst geodes spawn across the underground, and their crystals can be turned into bottles of enchanting, and crystals drop from both the large and small buds. Also regarding structures, you want to keep an eye out for the ocean monuments. The gold blocks in there only drop 1 to 3 ingots per block, which means not a ton of gold coming from those. But if you kill an Elder Guardian, you not only gain powerful rewards like a unique turtle helmet, but they're also guaranteed to drop some valuables in the form of gold, emeralds, or diamonds. Finally, regarding the mobs, you want to be careful of some of the rarer spawns on the surface. As I mentioned previously, phantoms will spawn during the night, unless you sleep. Pillager patrols can randomly spawn around players, and skeleton horsemen will frequently spawn during thunderstorms. Also keep an eye out for drowned that hold fishing rods, because like the tridents, they're guaranteed to drop a level 30 enchanted one if you kill them. It's also worth noting that the pillager outpost is now very good, as you're guaranteed to get crossbow related enchanted books and some tipped arrows from the chest at the top. If you do manage to get your hands on the bad omen effect, completing a raid nets you a massive amount of XP. I think it equates to about 20 levels from level 0. And killing an evoker during a raid will guarantee you a totem. Also keep an eye out for the Woodland Mansion. Only one evoker will spawn there, and it has some increased health, but also has a guaranteed drop rate for the totem. Vindicators and the previously unused Illusioner mob will also spawn throughout the rooms. The Illusioner is not a super powerful mob and doesn't do a ton of damage, but it does have 2 unique attacks. The first, which you'll see here, it raises its arms in the air and can inflict blindness on you for about 20 to 30 seconds. The second attack, which you'll see here, it summons illusionary duplicates of itself and turns itself invisible, so you need to be looking for the particles and not for the actual entity itself. Just to kind of note a couple more UHC settings as well. For the first 6 episodes, Golden Apples will give you 1 Heart of Absorption, which will make caving a little bit easier. And additionally, bookshelves can be used when enchanting, but to balance this out, any enchant above level 8 will cost the entire total of the enchant. So if you did a level 22 enchant, it will cost you 22 levels. Now I want to talk a little bit about the Nether, which has become a very big part of 1.18. All of the new biomes aren't really changed, but you should note that piglin brutes are now completely immune to lava and fire damage. The big change to note though is the reduction in the spawn rate of zombified piglins, which means a ton more ghasts will spawn, and the Nether is by default a little bit more scary. To account for this, ghasts now have a 1 in 3 chance to drop a netherite scrap, which you can then use 4 of to upgrade a weapon or armor to netherite. Nether fortresses are very much the same as you're used to, though the reduced spawn rates for zombified piglins means a much higher rate of blazes and wither skeletons, particularly in the Soul Sand Valley biome. Potions are pretty much the same as 1.8, although as with previous New Dawn seasons, we don't allow the use of strength or instant health 2 potions. We do allow all types of poison now, but to make it a little bit rarer, you can only get spider eyes from cave spiders, and normal spiders can very rarely drop the fermented spider eye instead. Also, if you're late to the Nether and late to getting to a fortress, you can still craft Netherwort through 4 of the Netherwort blocks, which you can find in the Crimson Forest. Bastions we rebalanced completely. Gold blocks only drop as 1 to 3 ingots instead of giving you 9 gold per block. But the loot chests are much better now, and they have a very, very high rate of spawning netherite scrap, as well as enchanted crossbows and some fun arrows, which makes the bastions by far the most optimal source for netherite gear. Netherite weapons aren't changed, but netherite armor has been buffed slightly, so each piece reduces damage taken by about 5%, giving you 20% reduction for a full set. Finally, one big thing we changed is that nether portals will now only link under very rare circumstances, which means you'll always come through a portal that is generated specifically for you. But also when coming back to the overworld, your portal may end up coming out in a different place to where you went in. And I think that covers most of the changes. A couple more things to be aware of in the world. Powdered snow. The last thing we want is for you to fall in and freeze to death, as many others have done so far. But also be aware that you can craft leather boots to run across powdered snow safely. You can break it with a shovel, you can disperse it with water, and you can pick it up in a bucket. Also worth noting is wolves are much, much stronger now, and their AI is a lot better, so grabbing a few can be very useful. And grabbing a whole pack can be deadly in combat. We also have a new list of advancements, many of which grant large experience rewards for completing, and I've put a list in the description for the full list of advancements that grant rewards. And there's a couple more death messages than normal. So we have Skewered by a player, which triggers when you kill someone in melee using a trident or kill someone while riptiding. And there's also Slain, Shot, Impaled, etc. by a flying player, which indicates that a player was flying using an elytra at the time they killed the person. Alright, I think that covers everything. If you've got questions, please feel free to get in touch, send me or Brody a message and we'll run it through with you. Otherwise, see you on Sunday.